in Windsor.
At 11:17 on a Thursday that started just like any other, Prince William's phone went off with a tone meant only for the most serious palace calls, the kind that happens maybe twice in a lifetime, the kind that splits everything into before and after. Within seconds of answering, the color drained from his face, and his usually steady hands began to shake. In that frozen moment, standing alone in his private office at Kensington Palace, the soft winter sunlight pouring through the windows suddenly felt blinding. William had just received news so heavy, so life-altering, it seemed even the old palace walls were holding their breath. The call was from Sir Clive Alderton, King Charles's principal private secretary, a man famous for keeping his cool even when the royal world felt like it was falling apart. But this time, Clive's voice carried something different. Not panic exactly, but something that sounded dangerously close. There was an edge in his tone that William had never heard before. Urgent, final, and impossible to ignore. "Sir," Clive began, keeping his voice formal but thick with concern. "You need to return to Windsor immediately. There's been a development, a serious one." The words hit like ice. William didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. The tone alone said everything. Whatever had happened, it wasn't routine, and it wasn't something that could be handled with calm statements or press releases. It was personal, immediate, and devastating in a way that no royal training could prepare him for. He hung up the call and stood still for 3 long seconds before moving with razor-sharp focus, the kind that comes only from years of discipline. Every step felt heavier than the last. He found Catherine in the nursery, helping Charlotte with her schoolwork, unaware that their entire world was about to shift in an instant. The look on his face stopped her instantly. Catherine had only seen that expression once before, on the day his grandmother passed without warning. Without a word, she quietly excused herself from the children and followed William into the hallway, her heart already pounding. "It's bad," William said quietly, his voice barely holding steady. "They won't say much over the phone, but it's serious enough that communications are being locked down." His tone alone said everything. Catherine's hand gently found his arm, giving it a reassuring squeeze. She didn't ask questions. Some moments don't need words, only presence. Within minutes, William's protection officers had been briefed. A black car waited in the courtyard, engine running, headlights cutting through the cold morning air. The team moved with their usual precision, but even they could sense something was off, something bigger than the usual royal routine. The housekeeper, who had served the Wales family for over 15 years, later told others she felt an unexplained chill as the car rolled out of the gates, one that had nothing to do with the icy December weather. The vehicle sped through London streets at a pace reserved only for the rarest of emergencies. Across the city, palace communication teams were already at work, encrypted lines buzzing, lockdown protocols triggered. All non-essential press briefings were suddenly postponed, and senior staff members were urgently recalled from leave. It was as if the entire royal machine had roared back to life in a flash, shaking off months of quiet. By the time William reached Windsor Castle, the tension was thick enough to feel in the air. Staff arriving for their regular shifts were redirected away from key areas. Corridors were cleared, private rooms sealed tight. Princess Anne had arrived half an hour earlier, her expression stern, steady, and unmistakably grave, the same one she'd worn during the family's hardest times. Those who caught a glimpse of Queen Camilla through the open doorways whispered that she looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. But the biggest clue that something serious was unfolding wasn't her expression, it was the silence. No official statement, no polished health update, no calming press release, just an unsettling silence that wrapped around the palace like a thick fog before a storm. the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. In that stillness, one truth became impossible to deny. Whatever news was coming, it was going to change everything. The morning had started just like any other, which only made what followed feel stranger, harder to grasp, almost unreal. William had woken up at 6:30 a.m., the soft sound of his kids' voices drifting from their rooms down the hall. He'd shared breakfast with Catherine and the children in the cozy kitchen at Kensington Palace, chatting about George's upcoming exams, Charlotte's piano recital, and all the little things that make life feel steady and real despite the weight of royal duty. Louis had accidentally spilled juice all over the table, Charlotte complained about her math homework, and George, ever the negotiator, had tried to bargain his way out of French lessons again. It was perfectly, beautifully ordinary. By 8:15, William was already in his office, going through the day's schedule with his private secretary. There was a meeting with a veterans charity at 10 a.m., lunch with advisors to finalize plans for the spring tour in Australia, a security review, and later in the afternoon, a call with constitutional experts about parliamentary matters. Just another busy royal day, structured, predictable, and full of duty. No one could have guessed that within hours, every detail of that calm routine would shatter. The royal household ran like clockwork, but that morning, something unseen was already shifting in the background, a storm brewing quietly, ready to turn their world upside down before the clock even struck noon. Even the light-hearted start to the morning, the moment his private secretary joked they might finish early enough for William to catch George's football practice, already felt like a memory from another lifetime. At 4 a.m., that thought had made him laugh, grateful for the rare simplicity of being just a dad for once, cheering from the sidelines instead of carrying the endless weight of royal duty. But by 9:30, everything had shifted. The first strange signal arrived, tiny, almost unnoticeable to most, but impossible to miss for anyone who understood the hidden rhythm of royal communication. It was a text from Anne, short, cryptic, the kind of message that made every instinct in him flare with alarm. It read, "Have you spoken with Father this morning?" William's brow furrowed as he stared at the screen. Anne almost never texted. She preferred direct calls or quiet face-to-face talks to avoid confusion. Her wording felt deliberate, cautious, as if she was trying to find out what he knew without actually saying too much. He replied that he hadn't spoken to his father since the previous evening, mentioning that King Charles had seemed a bit tired but otherwise fine. Her response came almost instantly. "Call me when you can. Privately." That single word, privately, hit him like ice. William dialed right away, pressing her contact again and again, but every call went straight to voicemail. Each failed attempt deepened the unease already curling tight in his chest. Hearing her calm, recorded voice, asking him to leave a message, suddenly felt wrong. Cold even. Anne always answered. Always. Her phone was practically part of her uniform, a symbol of duty she never set aside unless there was an exceptional reason. By 10 o'clock, Catherine could sense the change immediately. The light in his expression had faded, replaced by something sharper, quieter, and far heavier. His focus had turned inward, as though he was listening to something no one else could hear. "Everything all right?" she asked softly from the doorway, her voice carrying that particular tone she used only when she sensed real trouble was close. William looked up from his phone, its screen dim in the low morning light, and said quietly, "Just can't reach Anne." But his tone didn't match his words. It carried that unmistakable tension that told Catherine everything. Something wasn't right. She knew his instincts were sharp, especially when it came to sensing that quiet kind of trouble that never announced itself out loud. By 10:30, scattered pieces of information started coming together, but the picture was still messy. No clear answers, just fragments that didn't fit. The king's morning schedule had been completely cleared with no explanation. Every appointment canceled without warning. There hadn't been any political shifts or sudden state emergencies to justify it. Staff who'd been preparing for an investiture, laying out medals, printing programs, setting up rooms, were told to stop everything and leave with barely an hour's notice. Then came the shock that truly set alarms off. Queen Camilla had cancelled a planned visit to a London hospital, citing a personal matter. That was rare. Unheard of, even. Camilla was known for being steady and reliable, the kind of royal who showed up no matter what. The fact that she had pulled out of an engagement at the last minute was louder than any official statement could have been. William tried calling his father directly, breaking past the usual royal protocols. The phone rang 3 times before being picked up, not by Charles, but by his private secretary. The man's voice was polite, but his tone felt staged, practiced, like he was reading from a script designed to keep questions unanswered. It wasn't what he said that worried William, it was how he said it. Every word felt like a cover for something much larger. When the call ended, William sat back in silence, his stomach tightening. The uncertainty that had started as unease was now turning into something heavier, something that felt dangerously close to dread. At 11 o'clock, he was supposed to be at a veterans event, smiling for cameras, shaking hands, and listening to brave men and women share their stories. But instead, he sat frozen at his desk, staring at his phone, waiting for clarity that wouldn't come. Deep down, he kept hoping someone, anyone, would call to say everything was fine, that he was overthinking it, that the weight pressing on his chest was nothing more than his imagination. But the silence on the other end told him otherwise. Catherine quietly brought him a cup of tea, setting it down beside the untouched stack of papers. He hadn't read a word in merely 20 minutes. "William?" she said softly, placing a steady hand on his shoulder, her touch warm but filled with worry. "Whatever it is, we'll get through it." He nodded, though the motion felt empty, because deep down he knew some things couldn't be fixed. Some moments in life weren't meant to be solved, only faced head-on, carried with a quiet kind of strength that left no space for comfort or denial. Then, at exactly 11:17, his phone rang. That tone, the one reserved for the rarest, most serious palace emergencies. The sound alone sent a chill through the air. It was the sound that bypassed every protocol, the one no royal ever wanted to hear. It announced, without a single spoken word, that something had gone terribly wrong. William grabbed the phone on the first ring. Sir Clive Alderton's voice came through, strained, urgent, unlike anything William had ever heard from the usually composed man. His words were sharp, measured, and heavy enough to echo in William's mind long after the call ended. That was the moment, down to the very second, when his world shifted forever. The truth was starting to surface, and every instinct in him knew there was no turning back now. The drive to Windsor felt endless, even as the car sped through nearly empty roads. His protection officer had pushed well beyond the usual limits, treating the open motorway as if it existed for this one purpose: to get him there fast. In the back seat, William sat motionless, his body rigid, eyes locked on the window. The winter countryside rushed by in streaks of brown and gray, blurred shapes under a cold, pale sky. Each passing tree seemed like a silent warning, each mile a countdown to something he couldn't yet name. Thomas, his longtime protection officer, who'd been by his side through years of challenges, family turmoil, and high security moments, didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Some silences don't just fill a space, they command it, and this one felt almost sacred in its weight, thick with anticipation and the kind of dread that makes your heartbeat feel too loud. As the car rolled through Windsor's iron gates, William instantly felt the difference. The air itself seemed charged, colder, heavier, wrong in ways that defied logic. The castle grounds, usually so familiar and full of quiet life, looked transformed, eerily still, almost unfamiliar. Staff weren't moving through their normal routines. Instead, they stood in small clusters near doorways, whispering, waiting. Security presence had doubled, maybe even tripled, with officers posted at every visible entrance. The main gate, which usually buzzed with the normal rhythm of palace life, was completely sealed off, open only to essential personnel. The whole scene felt like the calm before something irreversible, an unspoken signal that whatever had happened wasn't ordinary at all. William was guided not toward the usual reception halls, but to a secluded private wing, one reserved for moments the world was never meant to hear about. Conversations here stayed behind closed doors, sealed in history, too sensitive for even loyal staff to overhear. In the corridor outside the king's private study stood Princess Anne, perfectly still, her posture straight, her expression composed but intense. She didn't pace, didn't fidget, she simply waited, carrying the tension in her stillness like a soldier standing guard. Her arms were crossed, her face unreadable, every inch of her projecting the discipline that years of navigating royal storms had forged. But when she finally saw William approaching, something subtle changed in her eyes. It wasn't sympathy, not exactly. It was recognition. She knew what he was about to be told. She knew how deeply it would hit him. There was a quiet understanding between them in that moment, a shared awareness that whatever words were waiting behind that door were about to carve a permanent mark on him. "How bad?" William asked, his voice low, trembling, like he already feared the truth but couldn't stop himself from asking. Anne didn't soften the blow. She never did. Inside the dim study, Charles sat in a tall-backed chair near the fireplace, though not a single flame burned. The December chill clung to the room, yet the cold felt deeper than the air. It was the kind that came from bad news that no one wanted to say out loud. Camilla stood behind him, one hand gripping his shoulder, half protective, half clinging, her eyes red and tired, as though she had cried too long and run out of tears. On the desk were medical reports stamped with official seals, stacks of government papers, and one handwritten note in Charles's familiar penmanship, the same pen still resting beside it like it had been dropped mid-thought. Near the window, Sir Clive Alderton, the king's top physician, stood with two royal advisors, their faces carrying the kind of weight that comes from knowing something no one wants to hear. They'd already faced the storm, and now they had to watch someone else walk straight into it. William stepped inside slowly, every step sinking into the thick carpet like his body was too heavy to move. His gut twisted. Something inside him screamed that whatever came next would change everything. The whole drive there, a part of him already knew. Charles looked smaller somehow, his strength hollowed out, his energy drained. Every line on his face seemed deeper, every motion slower, like he was carrying a truth too heavy for one man to hold. "William," Charles said, his voice rasping, rough and tired, like it had carried too many heavy words already. "Sit down, please." But William didn't move. His body refused the chair, standing tall like staying upright might somehow help him keep control over what was slipping away. "Just tell me," he said, his voice firmer than he meant it to be, louder, sharper, because fear always sneaks out sounding like anger. The royal physician stepped forward, clutching a slim folder that looked harmless, but everyone in that room knew it held something that could shatter a family. William felt the air tighten around him, his chest heavy, as if the truth inside that folder had already reached him before it was even spoken. Catastrophes, he realized, rarely arrive with thunder and chaos. They come in quiet rooms, in beige folders, in voices too calm to match the weight of the moment. The doctor started speaking in careful tones, all clinical and distant, as if calm words could somehow dull what was coming. Phrases like advanced progression, unexpected complications, and limited treatment options floated in the air like a storm he couldn't dodge. William tried to follow, but the meaning blurred. His brain refused to connect the words to reality. Finally, his patience broke. "How long?" he asked, cutting straight through the polished phrases, demanding the one truth that mattered. The physician hesitated, glancing at Sir Clive, the silent exchange saying everything before a single word was spoken. Weeks, maybe months if things go well, but not years. The room seemed to spin. William's knees nearly buckled as the truth hit him like a wave, heavy and relentless. His father, the king, who had waited a lifetime to finally wear the crown, was facing something no title or power could stop. Not someday, not in some far-off future, but soon. The truth was irreversible, heartbreaking, and real in a way that shook William to his core. Charles spoke with a strange calm, the kind that only comes after days of trying to make peace with the impossible. "I've known for 3 days," he said quietly, each word careful, heavy, as if he'd rehearsed them 100 times just to say them once. "I needed time to understand it myself before telling anyone else. I'm sorry you had to wait for the truth." William's first instinct was to burst out, to shout, to question why his father had kept it secret. But when he looked at Charles, that anger melted into something else. The exhaustion in his father's eyes, the faint tremor in his hands, the quiet acceptance written across his face. There was no space left for rage. "Does anyone else know?" William asked, his voice distant, almost not his own. "Anne, Camilla, the medical team, and the constitutional advisors," Charles replied, his tone steady but tired. "Preparations have already begun, and now you, because what comes next will be on your shoulders much sooner than any of us ever thought." After that, the hours passed in a blur. Some moments stretched endlessly, every second dragging like a weight, while others flashed by so fast they barely existed. William stayed at Windsor, trapped between duty and disbelief, unable to imagine walking out of that room and pretending life was still the same. Catherine arrived by early afternoon, having quietly arranged for the children to stay safely at Kensington Palace, shielded for now from the truth that would soon change everything for their family. When she found William, he was sitting alone in one of the smaller rooms, his eyes fixed on nothing, lost in a silence she had never seen, not even after his grandmother's passing. She didn't say a word. She just sat beside him, the air between them heavy, her presence the only thing that could possibly ease the weight pressing down on him. There were no words strong enough to make sense of what they were facing, just shared quiet, thick with shock and disbelief, the kind of silence that feels endless and fragile all at once. After a long stretch that could have been minutes or hours, William finally spoke, his voice so low it almost disappeared into the air. "I'm not ready," he said, the words trembling as they escaped. Then, with a rough breath, he added, "I'm not ready to be king, not like this, not now. Not when it means losing him." Catherine reached for his hand, fingers wrapping around his, her thumb tracing slow, comforting circles on his skin, an old habit, a silent promise that she was right there with him. "No one is ever ready for this," she said softly, her tone calm but strong, grounding him in the middle of the chaos spinning inside his head. "But you'll do it anyway," Catherine said, her tone steady but tender, her eyes locked on his. Then her voice softened, carrying a quiet promise, "And you won't face it alone, not for a single moment." By late afternoon, the palace had shifted gears completely. It wasn't just a home anymore, it had turned into a full-on command center. Behind closed doors, a silent storm was unfolding. Phones buzzed, papers shuffled, whispers filled the halls, yet to the outside world, everything seemed calm. The truth was still under wraps, guarded tighter than ever as the royal team scrambled to prepare for what was coming. Inside locked rooms, constitutional experts pored over old documents that hadn't seen daylight since 1952. They reviewed succession plans, debated regency protocols, and dissected the laws that outlined how power quietly moved from one monarch to the next. Some of the texts were so old they looked like they belonged in a museum, covered with dust, written in a language from another era. These were plans meant to stay theoretical, not to be needed so soon, not until William had more time, more experience, more peace before stepping into the role waiting for him. Princess Anne moved through Windsor with her usual precision, calm but focused, her energy cutting through the confusion that hung in the air like fog. While others froze in disbelief, she was already organizing, deciding, acting, making the hard calls no one else could bring themselves to face. Princess Anne coordinated directly with the Prime Minister's office through secure lines, making sure every part of the government machine was ready to move when the moment came. She wasn't leaving anything to chance. Every call, every message, every briefing mattered. The goal was clear: no hesitation, no confusion, and no cracks showing when the world eventually found out what was happening behind palace walls. She worked closely with top military advisors, combing through security procedures point by point. She knew that times like these, when emotions ran high and leadership was in flux, could make the whole system feel exposed. Moments of change always drew unwanted attention, and she wasn't about to let any potential risk slip through the cracks. At the same time, she took on one of the hardest jobs, reaching out to family across Britain and Europe. Every call carried the same devastating news, and with each one, the reality spread like quiet shock waves through the royal network. Even those long accustomed to public life felt the ground shift beneath them. Meanwhile, Camilla stayed close to Charles, closer than ever. Her entire world had shrunk down to one focus: being there for him through every single moment that remained. Time no longer moved in years or months. It was counted in weeks, in days, in hours that slipped away too fast. Staff said she barely left his side, sharing meals even when he couldn't eat much, holding on to routines that gave a fragile sense of normalcy. She'd sit nearby while he rested, reading quietly, refusing to step away, as if her presence alone could somehow slow down what was coming. Before they'd even had the chance to settle into their new reality, another truth hit William harder than anything else: the children. He and Catherine faced the kind of conversation no parent ever wants to have, deciding when and how to tell George, Charlotte, and Louis that their beloved grandfather, the man who made them laugh, told them stories, and treated them like royalty in his own gentle way, was slipping away. George, at 11, would understand enough to know what this meant. He'd grasp the finality of it, the permanence that would change his world forever. Charlotte, with her tender heart and quiet empathy, would feel it deeply, her emotions running just below the surface. And little Louis, he might not fully understand what was happening, which somehow made it even harder. The thought of him losing those precious years without realizing what was being taken was a pain that twisted in William's chest. So they decided to wait, to take a breath, to find the right words that could somehow make sense of the senseless. How do you explain something like this to the people you love most when you barely understand it yourself? By the time night fell, exhaustion hung over the palace like a heavy fog. Everyone involved felt drained, not just tired, but emptied, mentally, emotionally, completely. William stood by a tall window overlooking the darkened grounds, watching as the last bit of daylight disappeared into winter's early night. The silence around him felt almost sacred, a moment of stillness before he had to face what came next. Catherine joined him quietly, her reflection beside his in the glass. After a pause, she spoke, not asking, but knowing. "You're thinking about all the things you'll never get to ask him," she said softly, her words filled with the kind of understanding that comes only from lived pain. William nodded slowly, his throat too tight to speak. When he finally found his voice, the words came rough and heavy with emotion. "There's still so much I needed to learn about being king, about handling all of this without losing who I am," he said, the truth spilling out in a tone that trembled with frustration and grief. When he turned toward Catherine, she didn't see the next monarch standing before her. She saw a son, scared and hurting, fighting to stay composed. "I waited so long for this," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's not fair. None of this is fair." Anne, always the realist, didn't sugarcoat anything. Her words cut clean, sharp, but honest, the kind of truth meant to steady, not wound. "Fairness has never been part of monarchy," she said firmly, her gaze steady, unflinching. Then, just for a moment, her tone softened, showing a rare flicker of emotion. "But you're right. He deserved more time. We all did. And I'm sorry you have to face this now. No one should have to step up under these circumstances." The next morning brought no relief, just new challenges stacked on top of the heartbreak already consuming the palace. William was called to an emergency meeting inside the secure conference room, where advisors, legal teams, and senior officials had been working through the night without rest. The tension in the air was thick, the kind that pressed on everyone's chest. Exhaustion showed in every face around the table, but there was no time to slow down. The country wouldn't wait. Decisions had to be made, and fast. There was no room for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. Sir Clive Alderton opened the meeting with his usual calm authority, wasting no words. "Your Royal Highness," he began, his tone crisp and measured, "we must immediately address the key matters of succession and how the announcement will be handled. The situation demands choices that only you and His Majesty can authorize." William sat at the head of the long, polished table, a spot that felt both too soon and somehow unavoidable. It was a chair meant for the man he still wasn't ready to replace. His voice came out steady when he spoke, though under the table, his hands were clenched tight together, the only sign of the storm brewing inside. "What are the options?" he asked. The constitutional secretary, a seasoned woman with 4 decades of service to the crown, leaned forward, her tone professional but gentle. "The first question is timing. When should we inform the public about the king's condition?" She slid a stack of documents toward him, each page thick with implications. "Option 1, she continued, is immediate public announcement, complete transparency. We openly confirm the king's serious diagnosis and limited time frame." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "The advantage would be honesty. It would silence rumors before they begin and show strength through openness. But," she added carefully, "there are real risks. Panic could ripple through the public, the markets could react unpredictably, and international confidence might falter. The nation is still adjusting to His Majesty's reign. This could cause deep uncertainty just as stability was returning." She took a slow breath before continuing. Option 2 involves a gradual approach. We start by addressing general health concerns, nothing too detailed at first, then release updates as the situation progresses. This second option gave the public time to absorb the truth slowly, to process it together, but it carried a dangerous risk. If handled too carefully, people might later accuse the palace of hiding something, and once the full story came out, and it always did, the backlash could be fierce. Option 3, the secretary continued, is the most private approach. We share as little as possible until absolutely necessary. Adjust royal schedules quietly, keep official duties controlled, and only speak about the seriousness when the end feels very near. She paused, the air heavy with what she wasn't saying out loud. It would protect His Majesty's dignity and give the family space to grieve without public intrusion, but it could also hurt the public's trust. And right now, trust is everything. William's eyes stayed locked on the papers in front of him. Every option felt like walking into a storm, different directions, same heartbreak. No matter which path he chose, someone would be hurt, something would break. "What does my father want?" he asked finally, his voice low, nearly swallowed by the tense quiet in the room. Anne, who had stayed through every exhausting discussion that night, didn't hesitate. "He wants to protect you," she said softly, her voice steady with both strength and sorrow. "He doesn't want you carrying the weight of this decision, but that's impossible now. The choice is here, and someone has to make it." Before William could respond, the military secretary spoke up, adding another layer of concern. "There are security matters to consider, Your Royal Highness," he said. "When the seriousness of His Majesty's condition becomes public, threat levels will rise. We need to be prepared for that. We'll need to tighten security for all senior royals," the military secretary continued, his tone firm but cautious, "especially for you and your family, sir. Transitions like this always draw attention, and not all of it good. Succession brings instability, and we have to be ahead of it." William felt the weight sink in like stones. The weight on his shoulders, once just an idea, now felt painfully real, solid, crushing, impossible to ignore. His whole life, the idea of duty had been something distant, wrapped in ceremony and tradition. But now it was here. It was happening. His mind raced. He thought of his children, their laughter, their innocence, and how their world was about to change forever. He pictured Catherine suddenly having to step into a role neither of them expected so soon. The image of his father came next, the man who had waited decades for this reign, finally wearing the crown only to have time cut short. Then there was himself, a son, a husband, a father, and soon a king. But not like this. Never like this. William took a slow breath and looked up, his expression steady, but his eyes clouded with emotion. "I need to speak with my father," he said quietly but firmly. "Before any decisions are made, I need to hear it from him, what he wants, not what's constitutional, not what's traditional, what he truly wants." The meeting came to a halt as William was quietly escorted to his father's private rooms. The hallway felt endless, every step echoing with the weight of what was coming next. When he entered the study, he found Charles at his desk, papers scattered in front of him, still working, still trying to lead even as his strength faded. It was such a deeply him thing to do that William froze for a moment in the doorway, watching in silence. Charles looked up, his face pale but his eyes calm, and managed a faint knowing smile. "They've given you impossible choices, haven't they?" he said softly, motioning to the chair across from him. "Sit down. Let's talk, not as king and heir, but as father and son." William obeyed, sitting slowly, the gravity of the moment pressing into every breath. What followed was a conversation that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Charles spoke quietly about his fears, his regrets, the unfinished projects, the plans he'd never see through. But then he turned the focus on William, his expression softening with pride. He spoke of his son's growth, his sense of duty, his heart. He said, "I know you're ready, even if you don't feel it right now. You've become the man I always hoped you would be, and the crown will be safe with you." There was a long pause before Charles continued, voice gaining strength. "I want you to make the announcement, not today, but soon, within the week. The people deserve honesty, and I deserve to live these final days without the strain of pretending. And you," he added, his eyes meeting William's, "deserve time to prepare, to take this on with grace, not chaos." William swallowed hard, emotion rising in his chest. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice barely more than a whisper. Charles reached across the desk, his hand trembling but steady in purpose, and clasped his son's. "You can," he said firmly, "and you will, because you're my son." When William stepped back into the conference room, the decision was already made. His father's words had given him clarity, painful but certain. The announcement would come within 3 days, giving just enough time to prepare the family, coordinate with the government, and craft a message that spoke truth while still carrying grace. The impossible choice had been made, and now they would face whatever followed together. That Monday morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky mirroring the mood inside Buckingham Palace. At exactly 8 a.m., the palace released the statement that would send shockwaves across the globe. His Majesty the King has been informed by his medical team that his condition has advanced more quickly than expected. Treatment options have concluded. The King and his family remain deeply thankful for the continued support and understanding of the public during this difficult time. Every word had been chosen with care, measured, respectful, and stripped of drama. It carried no false comfort, no sugarcoating, just the truth, plain and powerful, exactly as Charles had wanted. But the reaction, anything but calm. Within minutes, news outlets around the world interrupted their broadcasts. Screens flashed with breaking headlines. Social media flooded with messages, prayers, disbelief, and heartbreak. Across Britain, people paused where they stood, at bus stops, in offices, in schools, staring at their phones, reading the same lines over and over. Inside the palace, William stood by a window, staring out at the cold February sky, knowing that from this moment on, everything had changed. The crown wasn't just a symbol anymore, it was his reality. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter in this royal saga is only just beginning.